As promised, we're going to be doing our first project in this video. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how this is going to work. Long story short, I'm going to give you a basic outline for what I want you to create and the things I want the application to be able to do. That might mean creating a new function, creating a new object, creating a new variable, the basic stuff we've done in the project at the end of every video. We're going to be building on this project 2 more times in this chapter. So make sure to actually do the work because it's going to come back around in a couple videos. I promise it won't be too hard, and in the end, you can watch me do everything. So if you stumble along the way, that's totally fine and totally expected. As long as you can make it work in the end, then you are good to continue on to the next videos. In this one, we're going to be building a basic bank account. Okay, so what sort of stuff would you want to do with a bank account? You might want to open an account. You're probably going to want to deposit money into an account. I'm sure you're going to want to withdraw money as well. And lastly, you probably want to know how much money you actually have in your account. We're going to be building those 4 basic units of functionality in this video. Wow, units of functionality. I think that's the most boring way to describe that. In this video, you're going to be building those 4 functions that do 4 pretty cool things. All right. First thing, as always, we need to save a new file that we can use for our app. I'm going to be creating one in my Node Basics folder on my desktop, and I'm going to call it bankaccount.gis. Once you have that new file, make sure you have your terminal up and running and that you've navigated into whatever folder you're storing your files in. In this case, I'm in my Node Basics folder. In JavaScript, there's one thing you can do that we haven't talked about yet, and that's called leaving yourself a comment. A comment is not run by the program. You can't change variables or log anything out to the screen. It's simply a way to write something in the file for either yourself or another developer to read. It can explain what a function does, what arguments a function expects, or it could just say what you're thinking or something that needs to be fixed in the future. In this case, we're going to start the project by creating a comment for everything I want you to do, so you can go fill in the blanks yourself. First up, to create a comment, you use 2 forward slashes just like this. Pretty easy, nothing too crazy there. After your 2 forward slashes on this line, you can type whatever you want. Anything is valid, any character is valid, including 2 forward slashes. You can also have a multi-line comment. To do that, you start it with a forward slash and a star. Now I can have all sorts of text, some numbers. I can have some JavaScript code that's never going to actually execute, so it doesn't really matter if it's valid. And then I can finish this all up by closing the comment. Anywhere in here, I can have all sorts of stuff like variable declarations. I could put one in here since that's not in a comment. You can use them all throughout your code. All right, enough of that. I want you to create a function called deposit. I also want you to make a function called withdraw. And lastly, I want you to make a function called getBounce. We're going to leave off creating new accounts in this one. As we build on the bank account example, we'll add ways to create new accounts. For now, you're just going to have 1 account. All right, up at the top, go ahead and create this initial object. I'm going to do this before I set you free, just so you're on the right track. I want to create a new variable called account. And I'm going to set it equal to an object. So I need to open and close some curly braces. And then right inside, the only property we really need for this particular part of the bank account is a bounce. And I'm going to start that at 0. Once you have your bounce property set to 0, you can put a semicolon at the end of your curly braces, and you are good to go. Now that you have your account example, go ahead and create these functions. For deposit, you're probably going to want to create a function that takes an account and an amount. So it needs to take this initial account object, which is up here, and it needs to take the number to add to the bounce. Same thing with withdraw. Here, you're going to want to have an account argument so it knows which account to modify. And also it's going to have an amount, how much money you want to take out. Get balance doesn't need to add or subtract from the total balance. All it needs is the account object, and it can pull the balance out for you. That should be enough to get you going. Go ahead and create these 3 functions, and when you're done, call them a couple times. Deposit a few different amounts, withdraw an amount, get the balance, make another deposit, and get the balance again. Play around with it, make sure all the numbers add up inside of your terminal, and when you're done, you can watch me build it. So, take a moment to pause, fill out these functions, and when you're done, click play. All right, hopefully you were able to build your basic bank account functions. Let's get started. First up, the deposit function. We need to create a new function here, so I'm going to use the function keyword. Next, we have it already defined in this handy little comment, so I'm simply going to copy the name, deposit, and I'm also going to copy the arguments just like we commented up above. Once I have my 2 arguments in there, I can close the parentheses and I can open and close my curly braces, and we're ready to fill it out. Notice how handy these little comments are. It's almost like a little scratch notepad, so you can leave yourself just a quick note about what you want to create. Make sure it all works together in your head, and then once you're happy with it, you can actually spend the time building it. It's going to save you a lot of time if you do a little pre-planning with comments. Inside of here, we only need to do one thing. We need to add whatever this number is to whatever this account.bounce is. Here, you want to reference account.bounce, and you want to add it to the account balance plus the amount. So we need to reference the account balance again, and then we need to add to that the amount. So imagine the initial account balance was 20. We want to set it equal to 20 plus amount, let's say it's 15, and in the end, we're going to get 35 set into account balance. Everything on the right is going to execute first, then it's going to get set to whatever is on the left. There's actually a shorthand for doing this because it's so common. Remember the plus plus and the minus minus we talked about, which adds 1 or removes 1 from a variable? There's also a plus equals and a minus equals. Plus equals does exactly what we have right here. It takes a variable, it gets its current value, and it adds a number to it. We can simplify this statement by putting a plus in front of the equal sign and deleting the second account balance and the plus sign. Here, we take the account balance and we add to it the amount. Perfect. Let's go ahead now and fill out the withdraw function. To do that, I'm going to be creating a new function, so I need to use that function keyword. Up next, withdraw is the function name. Now, after a space, we can open and close our parentheses and fill out our arguments. Here, we only need 2, the account object, which we need in order to modify, and the amount we want to take out. Here, I'm going to type account. You have to use a comma and a space to separate your arguments, and here I'm going to create the amount argument. Now I can open and close my curly braces and we can start modifying this. Just like we used the plus equals shorthand right here, we're going to be using the minus equals to remove from the account balance. Here, we're going to be taking account dot balance, then minus equals amount. Fantastic. Now the withdraw function is complete and we can add and withdraw money from our account. Before we test this out, let's go ahead and create our get balance function so we can actually test this out. Creating get balance starts as always with the function keyword. After that, we're going to type the function name, get capital B balance. Then in parentheses, whoops, I forgot my space, account. This one only takes one argument because it doesn't need to modify. Now over here, after the curly braces, I can hit enter, and we can return whatever the value of account.balance is. Here, all we have to do is reference account.balance, but don't forget to put the return keyword in front of it to make sure it gets returned from the function. All right, let's go ahead and test out what we've built. To get started, I'm going to add a little bit of money to our account. To do that, I'm going to call deposit. I'm going to call it as a function, so I need to open and close my parentheses. And deposit expects two arguments. The first is an account. I'm going to pass in the account object we created on line 1, and the second is simply a number. In this case, I'm going to add $1,000 to the account. Now that we have money added to the account, let's go ahead and check our balance. I'm going to call getBalance right inside of console log so we can check the balance in one line. Since getBalance only returns a number, we won't actually be able to see it unless we use console.log. Inside of here, we can call get capital B balance. Since it's a function, we have to open and close our parentheses, and all getBalance expects is an account. Perfect. All right, before we start withdrawing money, let's go ahead and run this and make sure we're on the right track. To do that, I need to run node space bankaccount.js. Here you can see $1,000 printed to the screen. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and withdraw some money from our account. To do that, I'm going to be calling withdraw. Now withdraw takes two arguments, the first being the account as always. We need to know which account to modify. Up next, the money we want to withdraw. In this case, I'm going to pull out $121, put a semicolon at the end, and we have successfully withdrawn from the account. Let's go ahead and copy this console log. I'm going to copy and paste it just below the withdraw call. I'm going to rerun the file from the terminal, and you can see our account balance went from 1,000 down to 879. Awesome. We now have a way to deposit, withdraw, and get the account balance from our bank account. As you keep learning about Node.js, we're going to keep building on this bank account example. By the end of this chapter, we'll be done with the bank account, and we'll be able to do some pretty cool stuff. So stick around, because up next is Booleans.